Welcome back to Cherry Picking. Today, we're trying to make this 1966 Ford Station Wagon less broken. Let's get into it. Now, when I mean less broken, I really mean putting the engine back together. In the last video, you saw this thing get blown apart entirely, the entire top end taken off, as well as the timing set, which we had found to be, well, destroyed. So where we are at today is picking up right where we left off. We got a new timing set, double roller timing set that I found in my garage, buried, covered in oil and dirt and crap that came out of something. I don't know, but it fits this. So we cleaned it up, and I'll show you that in a second. And we're going to be putting it back on, as well as painting our front face of our engine and our timing cover and all of our brackets and our power steering pump and basically everything, because although I don't want this thing necessarily to be perfect because I don't want to spend time and energy restoring it, I do want to make it look nice because hopefully this thing's going to be our daily driver. So the goal for today's video is to get this engine completely back together along with its new 4-barrel intake and 4-barrel carburetor and make it look nice while doing it. So let me go ahead and show you this timing set that we have and show you what we're going to be doing today, or at least for this portion. So if you don't mind my pink towel that is covering my valley, you can see in here, there it is, that is where our timing set used to be, and here is our timing set. As you can see, well, if you don't know, FE's actually had a nylon gear set on this larger gear. And so all those metal teeth that are showing, well, those aren't supposed to be there. They're supposed to be covered by little yellow nylon teeth. So this one's pretty plumb worn out. There's our old 2-barrel intake that we took off. As you can tell, it is crusty. And somebody decided to go to every hardware store in their city, get all of the silicone they could find, and put it all on. If we come back here, here we have our new used timing set. It's got a little bit of surface rust on it, but honestly, it's fine. It's not going to matter. I'm going to wire wheel it, get it cleaned up, and it will be just fine. The back actually looks perfect. No issues at all in the back, but the front does have a little bit of surface rust. The lower gear is hardened gear, so it's totally fine. But I have no idea what these came out of, what motor they came out of, where they came from, but all I know is that they are perfectly usable and quite a bit stronger than what came out of it, especially what actually came out of it. Also right here we have a new used alternator bracket to fix mine. I do have to weld it up, as you might be able to see, and this bracket is just going to fix the one that's in there, and I'll explain that when we get to that. But for now, if we come over here, I had to blow apart the front of my garage in order to do it. We're getting to basically what we're working on today, for me at least today, at this moment in time. We're going to be cleaning and painting all of our hardware and accessories so that we can make them look nicer. So as you can see, I've got our timing cover just sitting, and I'm just using some gasoline and a brush and trying to clean up all these parts. I've got our harmonic balancer and our crank pulleys, as well as all of our bolts. Just going to get them cleaned up, and I'll throw up a time lapse of me cleaning everything, and then we'll go ahead and paint everything so that it looks nice and new. Oh, and that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and get to a super long time lapse, maybe not that long, I don't know, of cleaning and then painting every single part on this, and then we'll go ahead and throw our timing chain back on, put on our timing cover, and, well, keep going. All right, well, while we're waiting for some of that stuff to dry, might as well do a quick little wire wheel on this timing chain so that we can put it on the car, because once it's cleaned, it can go right on. So I'm just going to take a little wire wheel and a drill, a little cheek poker here, and just go around and get all the rust off. All right. Yeah, that's pretty good. I think that's totally usable. And the other thing is, one, this is going to be covered in oil, so not really worried about the rust creeping. But I also live in the desert with 0% humidity, and this motor's already a tight motor anyways. I don't really know how much longer it'll actually last, so not exactly worried about this being the issue. So let's go put this in the motor. Now, not 100% entirely sure how this is supposed to go, but I'm going to assume I'm going to put our centering dowel in first. That tells where the gear is supposed to go, and then we are going to drop that on there. But we have to line up our motor first because, well, we got to line up our motor. So let's see, this is going to go, I think, yeah, the keyed portion on the lower sprocket. There's a half moon key in the back, so this is going to go on like that. Okay, and that's reasonably tight. But now what I'm going to do is I put it on like that so that I can roll it over. Because, well, I need to see if the dots line up, because I know it's going to be close considering I haven't moved the cam at all. I might be a tooth off, but let's take out some spark plugs so that we can roll this thing over easier, because it is very, very high compression at this point. Okay, we have one more spark plug to do that is in a terrible spot. Oh, fuck. Ow. Well, broke it loose. That was not fun, though. I don't know why these are so tight. I don't know if I've ever actually taken these out yet. I'm going to put the crank bolt back in and turn it over with that, because it's tight. Too tight to just grab the snout for. Turn the motor over. Till our dot comes back around. We're almost there. We are off a single tooth, so I'm glad I did that. So, now that we know that we're off a single tooth, we can slide our gear forward, put our dowel pin in place. There we are. All right. So, you may not be able to see this, but right down here is a little dot imprint. That's our timing mark. And there's also one right where this key is. And they need to line up perfectly, just like that. So, we know our motor is timed. We can go ahead and take our bolt and put it back on here, and this gets aligned a certain way. I'll go ahead and start our bolt. This is our cam bolt, holds in the cam as well as this fuel pump lobe. which gets our fuel pump to work. Focus, there it is. So our lobe is in place, so now we just need to tighten this up. It's a 5/8, and I'm going to do that now. And this was pretty tight on here. You definitely don't want that coming loose. And there it is. Now, there's a little bit of slop in this chain. It might have stretched a little bit, but I'm actually not super worried for how much it is. It's a lot less than what it was, and it ran great with the one that was on there. So I think that's good enough. Plus, now we have a double roller instead of a nylon timing gear. This one, other than the chain, this one should last forever. So our motor is timed. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I throw some oil on this, and then put our splasher on. And then before we put the timing cover on, we're going to paint it. So we're going to do that now. All right, well, we're pretty much wrapping up for today. It's a little bit later than I wanted to go. It's about 4 o'clock, and, well, the sun is already starting to get down there. But we've got our, I don't know if we can focus, we've got our engine block painted. Is it perfect? No, but it's a lot nicer than it will be, because we will be able to see most of this right up there on the head. We've also got our crank snout painted, and I already just set it on there just to have a place. And as you can see, our timing chain. I did go ahead and just throw a quick coat on this power steering pump. I didn't really clean it super well. I might totally tear this all off and scuff it and spray it again to make it look nicer, but it's actually been dented a bunch, as you can see down there, and it's not in the greatest shape, so I just threw a quick coat just to have something on there. We actually have our timing pointer right here, and it is painted both sides, which unnecessary maybe, but it's done. And if we come over here, as you just saw, I just painted all of these, our harmonic balancer and our 2 pulleys. I still have a few other things to paint, specifically the power steering pump bracket that holds the power steering pump on. But we've got a majority of all this stuff painted, and if we take a walk back onto here, I have our timing cover, which looks pretty good, as you can see. Pretty happy with it. I just got to knock the seal back into it. One of the last things we need to do, besides putting this all back together, is, well, I need to chrome polish those so that they look nice and shiny. And I actually have a few other things that need to be polished before we put this all back on, and then all of it can start going back on either tomorrow or the next day. I'm kind of wanting to let this stuff sit so it can cure really well, especially the stuff on the block here. The longer it can sit, the more it will cure, and then once we put a heat cycle in it, it will cure fully. I still have to take off our oil filter. Definitely forgot to do that earlier, so probably doing that tomorrow, along with hopefully putting on our timing cover and maybe even dropping the intake. Who knows? We'll see. I'll see you tomorrow. Wow, it's pretty bright out here. Well, good morning. Hope you slept well. I did. Well, we're out here semi-early in the morning-ish. Right back on it. Now, I've went ahead and got this thing prepared to drop the oil. Got a container underneath the car. However, before I can drop the oil, I need to finish getting all of the timing cover gasket off of the surface, because I don't want it dropping in the pan, because it might not come out, and I would hate for that stuff to get clogged in the oil pump. And we're already going to be dealing with cleaning out the entire pan anyways for all of the nylon teeth that, you know, are gone. They're probably somewhere in the pan. So, anyways, we're going to get this timing cover gasket off and then drain the oil. And then take off our oil filter and oil filter housing and clean that, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Put it back on and start putting this thing back together. So let's do that. Well, that actually went way easier than I expected it to be. Just use a blade and it comes right off. So, nice. Now we're going to try to drop the oil. which I'm going to be smart and move my phone. I'm just going to take a big crescent. And I was thinking I was going to have to lift the car up a little bit, but I can actually access this from here. Got a few different wrenches. And don't know exactly what size it is, but you know, got close enough. It's got to be one of these. That's too small. I have a feeling both of these are going to be too small. Nope. Nope. 7/8 is perfect. Well, I can. Oh, there it goes. Woo, that was tight. Although it sure didn't seem like a lot. All right. Yep. Let me show you this. All right. All that. Oh, focus. I don't know if you could see there, but that's RTV. It's like red, you know, RTV that they used on the rest of the block on the oil drain plug. So not only is that not exactly a good sign, it's a concerning one. Because why would you put RTV on a drain plug? Never have I ever seen RTV being used on a drain plug. That is insane. Insane. I've done a lot of situational stuff, you know, when you're in a situation and you got to get out of one. But I've never done this. Mark that on the list. I mean, it held apparently. So, must have worked. All right, well, I don't know how long it's been or what I said I was going to be doing last, but we're at the point of putting the timing cover back on. I've cleaned all of our gasket surfaces, including the cork gasket at the bottom. I've cleaned out our pan as well as I could, but the pan and the pump, got them as clean as I could, make sure there's no nylon teeth that have left over in there. And now we're at the point of putting on our timing cover, which I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit of oil on our timing chain and whatnot, and just to get it wet so that we're not running this thing dry when it first starts up. So I'll just put a little bit of oil on that. And then I'm actually going to take some of that oil and wipe it on our seal in our timing cover, wherever that is. I went ahead and already put in the seal on our timing cover, as you might be able to see. And we're just going to get some oil on it. Make sure it is nice and lubed so that it doesn't run dry at all. Same with our crank sleeve. We're just going to put a little bit of oil on that guy for the same exact reason. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to go ahead and put some of our trusty gasket shellac. This is the stuff that I use for basically everything instead of RTV, because it never fully hardens and you don't need much of it. And when you use cork gaskets and stuff like that, it seeps into the pores really well and fills in, and it really just seals much better than using silicone or RTV of any kind, because it is oil doesn't just go right past this stuff, where silicone and RTV, even oil-based ones, they just don't hold oil back super well, and you end up globbing this nasty stuff all over the place, where you can just put a thin layer of this stuff and it's perfectly good. So, okay, I'm going to put a little bit more on the oil pan itself because it has a much bigger job of sealing. Lay our timing cover gasket, which would normally just stick right on, except for it bent a little bit. Lightly coat our timing cover very carefully as we can. Slide this on. Just like that. And then, like I said, we'll take our sleeve and throw that on. Just like that. All right, it took a second to get those started, but no biggie. Okay. All right, well, it's on. May have cross-threaded a bolt or two, but you know, that just means that it's tight. So now, our motor is back to being semi-closed up. Obviously our valley with our intake, but that's no big deal. Most importantly is we have the oil filter housing to get on, now the fuel pump to get on, then the intake, and then water pump will hopefully be one of the last things we do, as well as all the accessories. But now is the point, and that slides in and out really good, so that's nice. That means that it's evenly around there. So pretty sure the crank pulley could go on now. The only thing that's going to stop me from doing that is the fact that I don't have an impact that can get in there to do it, so I have to do it by hand. So I'm going to put on the crank pulley now. Alright, so we've got our harmonic balancer, and I went ahead and marked it. I just had a silver Sharpie because I didn't have a white paint marker, so silver Sharpie is probably fine. I marked it at 0, and then I marked it at 10, and then I put a dot at 12 because that's most likely where I'm going to time this thing to, is right about 12. So I just have a dot there just so that I know how close. This will be a lot easier to see with a light since it's painted. Hopefully all of these letters become super visible, but we're ready to put it on, which hopefully it slides right on, which it actually started to, which is good. And then we take our crank bolt, I'm going to go ahead and try to hold the balancer and tighten it, and that's pretty tight. Whew. And we'll actually rotate this back. So it's on top dead center. Okay, and there's our balancer. So now let's finish cleaning up our oil filter bracket so I can throw it on, and I'll get that thrown on and the fuel pump, and I'll catch up with you once we're pretty much ready for the intake. Okie dokie, artichokes. As you can see, we've got some gaskets in there. Neato. Well, what's going to happen right now is I'm about to make a terrible, terrible mistake, and I'm going to get in the car and try to manhandle this intake right on there. So let's try that. Let's try it. How bad can it be? It's only 85 pounds, to which there is no good way to lift it. Well, that actually went way easier than I expected it to. I have to say, I am shocked, but not surprised. Now I just gotta get out of here, which is actually the hard part. Oh man. Well, there it is. Right there. Look at it. That's an intake. And I don't even think I've messed up the gaskets at all. They actually look like they're in their correct place. So now what I'm going to do is drop in all our bolts and hope that it seals nice. You can already tell we are sitting a little high. I got to go wipe my fingers off. Give me a sec. Now we can start dropping our bolts in, which I went ahead and wire wheeled. Are they perfect? No. Are they good enough? Absolutely. Well, I gotta say this was a huge success because I was fully expecting to throw my back out. So great success. And all of these seem to be lining up pretty well except for one so far, which is normal. On FEs, they don't want to line up at all because you got to realize that this is a really terrible way to do a block and an intake, or heads and an intake. All right, and for the final torque, you know, we're just gonna break out the old torque wrench and just double, triple check that they're all tight. Yep. Click, click. Ugh, click, click, click. That one was really tight. Click, click, and last one. Click, click. Yep, that's all torque there to spec. Don't be checking those numbers because they're good. Well, look at that. That is a huge, huge piece to the progress on this motor, and I feel very accomplished and totally like I didn't let anyone down. Now, I got to do the fun part of putting all the push rods back in, putting the rockers back on, which is super pretty easy. Then I just have to cut the intake gaskets at the corners or at the edges so that the valve cover gasket can sit on nicely. And then once the rockers and everything on, we can put on our valve cover gasket. But for now, I'm going to call it. I don't want to try to put anything else on at the moment, so I'll see you in a few seconds. We're going to be putting the rest of the stuff on. But for right now, I'm going to go take a nap. All right, well, it's been a few days, but I've been working on a few things, but had some other things to do, so let me show you what I've been working on. Okay, as you can see, it probably doesn't look very much different from when you last saw it, but I'll show you a few things that I've been trying to touch on. I couldn't work on it the past few days, so I did a little bit yesterday, but we've got our new studs for our carb. They're much shorter because I'm going to be running a very thin phenolic spacer that will have our vacuum from our transmission. I have not actually put on our valve covers. They're just sitting here still, and I do have a breather. It is the incorrect one. I have a correct one coming, but it's what I had that I could put on it. As you can see right here, there's these two little spacers that I just have sitting on the motor. And these are actually factory Ford. These are pretty special. I'm just setting them there so they can continue to dry because I painted them. But those are actually factory Ford non-AC power steering bracket spacers. They go right behind the power steering bracket into the head there. And they go in between. And they space out your power steering pump when you don't have a cast iron AC bracket, which this car used to have. But because it doesn't, I had to go find some spacers in my yard of parts. And that's how thick they are. So if you needed to make them, you could make them, I guess. They're about I can't even focus. They're about 1/4 inch. And they're just little spacers that space out your pump. So we've got our pump semi-assembled, but not completely. And as you can see, we actually have a new power steering line. Turns out the line that I had sent to me was the correct line. It just has a different size fitting, but it's the same exact size threads and everything. So I don't know where that changed, but it did. And I actually went ahead and replaced all, I don't even know if you can see that, geez. The sun is not making this easy. So you may be able to tell I have replaced our power steering return lines. I replaced the one that goes all the way in the back right there, and also the one that goes back to the pump, because the ones that were on this car were in rough shape. So I've got our power steering line situation figured out, and that is a huge success because, well, if you couldn't remember, it was just leaking out of the fitting back there so terribly, just dumping on the exhaust. So that was a huge, huge battle that needed to be waged and won, and it was. So that's taken care of. Other than that, I just got our water pump on, as well as our new thermostat housing that I had to go get. And as you can see, water pump looks nice, just the 4 bolts. And other than that, I really haven't done much. I did switch our alternator bracket to a correct AC alternator bracket. It had an incorrect one that is right here, and this one was not correct. The AC one steps out about an inch. I don't even know if you can see that back there. You won't be able to see it, but it steps backwards and goes to the back of the alternator. And then I also put this chrome bracket up on. So I've done that, and we're at the point now where I pretty much have to tidy up the top end now. I've got to go ahead and finish up our power steering situation because, well, that's a big thing to connect back to the motor. And then pretty much we just have to take care of all of the fittings on top of the motor, which we've started to get sorted out. So other than that, I have to transfer all of our fittings, like our water, our temp sensor, as well as I have a 66 only PCV fitting that goes in there. And there's another one that goes to the back that I got to take off the other intake. And then I also have to get our throttle linkage bracket, which is still on this intake. And I'll actually show you. That's the PCV fitting I got to get off. And we also have our throttle bracket that I just need to take off and clean. And then at the moment I was trying to start rebuilding our carb, as you can see, except for I'm kind of using two different kits to make this work because I had some leftovers from the carb that I did on this truck, but I didn't have enough, and I don't have needle and seats, and I actually can't buy any right now that aren't way too expensive or readily available. I don't have a large speed parts store near me, so I'm going to have to just order a kit, and that'll keep me from having to use two different kits, one of them being from the 70s, to try to make this work. So that's going to have to be put away. And last but not least, I'll show you, this is actually the correct PCV valve for a 66. If you've worked on any 66, 67, this is actually correct for a 67 GT390. And this basically just goes from the front crossover to the rear crossover, from the front crossover to the rear crossover, and then to the PCV valve on the passenger side valve cover. So I gotta fix this because it's got a slight bend in it right there, as you can see. And then I've got to paint it and put it on. So I might do that right now just to get it over with, since I can't do the carb. And well, that's pretty much what we've got going on. So as of today, I can't rebuild the carb, which I was hoping to get done so that I just had it ready to go when I finished up all the stuff on top here. But it looks like I'm gonna have to put that off for at least a few days. And in the meantime, I'm just gonna start plugging away and getting all these fittings on and getting them in place, and also probably painting a few parts. So anyways, you'll see me when I'm rebuilding the carb. Okay, so it's actually been, I don't know, 2 days, something like that, but you know, we're just moving along forward. I painted a bunch of things, but I went over here and decided I needed to prime our engine before we get much further. Make sure that our bolts are actually letting oil goes through them. So I went ahead and dumped a bunch of oil in the motor here. I tightened up the drain plug because that was kind of loose, so I tightened that up. So hopefully it's holding fine. I have changed the spark plugs. I went ahead and just changed those real quick. I had some new ones. They're just Autolite 45s, copper plugs. Nothing special because that's what works fine. And yeah, so our carburetor is just sitting on there. There's actually a few things I'm missing from it. It's not bolted down at all. And what I've got here is our prime tool. So this is basically just a FE distributor that is blown apart in order to make a tool. This one, as you might be able to see, has seen some better days. It was basically blown out by the roll pin for the lower gear that runs off the motor. But this one was converted just for oil priming. Now on an FE, it goes counterclockwise, so we're going to be doing it counterclockwise, and we're just going to prime. Now normally you'd want to turn the motor over while you're doing this as well, so you get oil in all of the bearings and stuff like that, and I'll do that later on. For now, I just want to make sure that I am getting oil before I put all my valve covers on, so that's why I'm doing it here. So this thing, I think, has probably, yeah, it's sat for long enough, and I can already see oil, and we're building pressure now. Now the goal is I want to see oil coming out of all of our push rod tubes. Okay, well, I don't know if you can actually tell, but I am getting consistent flow out of the entirety of this side, and it is actually pulling out some older oil as well that was left over from whatever in these rods and rockers. All right, so you can see our drill there, and if I go here, if I turn it on, I don't know if you could tell, but there is oil dripping. And if I stop, you can actually see it kind of go away and then come back. So we're getting oil flow. Okay, so, well, some things have happened. Time has passed. The world goes on. I'll show you what I did here in a few minutes. Well, seconds, I don't know. I'll show you here in a sec what I've been working on and what's been going on. But for right now, I actually have to put on our valve covers. It's that time. And as you saw a little bit ago, we just cleaned these things up. And I actually went through with a hammer and flattened out the valve cover. And if you don't do this to your stainless steel valve covers, I promise someone has over torqued them. They will be warped and they will not hold oil and they will leak everywhere. So they are completely flat now and fixed. And now we're going to take our Love Almighty Indian head gasket shellac, or this one is actually lion's head gasket shellac, because with the times. And we're just going to do a nice light coat, nothing crazy. It's just enough to fill in imperfections. And this stuff, I already have one of the valve covers on, as you might be able to see. I just put it on just now. And I'm doing this one quickly because I've actually had the surface on the motor ready for, well, a little bit longer than I want to. Because although this stuff doesn't dry, it does get tacky and does start to harden a little bit. And you want to try to get it before that actually happens. So, I'm sure many of you already know not to over torque your valve cover bolts. I hope I don't have to surprise anyone by saying that. Okay, they're all started. And now I'm just going to take our socket on an extension and run these all down by hand first. Get them nice and lightly snug with our hand. There. 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 That one can actually take a little bit more. Now it really, oh geez, we're losing stuff. It really does feel like you could just keep going and going and going, but you got to remember, especially if you're using cork gaskets like you should be, instead of rubber gaskets that will always leak, can't crank on them. You just can't, fellas. You crank on them, and they'll start leaking all over the place because you're gonna bend a big old U shape or whatever. So just 15 foot-pounds or just a little, not even an UGA, just a, Valve covers officially on, and they look great. Now, let me show you what we've been working on since, well, lots happened. Now, as you may be able to tell, things look a little bit different. First off, went ahead and painted the top of our radiator. Just did that real quick yesterday just because I wanted it to get done. Also, look at this. We have a fan shroud. This is actually a correct 65.6 Galaxy fan shroud that, well, just found in a shed somewhere. Didn't know we had it, but found it. So put it on there. Painted it, put it on there. I also just threw a light coat on the radiator support because if you saw it earlier, you know, it was rough. Anyways, went ahead, rebuilt a distributor yesterday. I actually had to rebuild 3 or 4 of them to make that one work. So it's there. We also got a coil. That chrome is real shiny. I also have a coil that I painted and a bracket from, this is the original bracket that was on the motor, and put the coil on. This is a DuraSpark 2 coil. As you can see, we have a carburetor. It's just sitting on there for now because the big ticket winner of all of this is actually this tube right here. If you remember, this tube looked all nasty, and now it is nice and shiny and not bent out of whack. So now that will connect to our PCV right there. Those will connect back there, and we also have a new brake booster line since the other one was cut off weirdly. And look at that. So distributor, coil, PCV line, as well as the brass fittings on. Radiator painted, fan shroud painted, and on. Valve covers on. So we're getting real close to getting this thing ready to fire. It actually is already timed just a little bit. I just threw it in and got it in the correct position so that we can get it running. So pretty much the only major thing we have left is I have to put that on. That's our DuraSpark box. And I need to put our fan on and tighten our belt, and then finish hooking up all the rubber hoses for the PCV and that sort of thing. Tighten the carburetor, and we should be able to get this thing running. Well, as you may or may not be able to tell, it's kind of dark now. And yeah, I didn't get it finished, but you know, that's okay. Sucks for you. I'm sorry about that because, well, this is the end of the video here. Cliffhanger. Sorry about that, but there's too much to do. I've tried to get as much as I can done, but there's just too much still missing. I've really got to get this PCV routed, as well as make sure that all my vacuum leaks are going to be plugged up, because I need the brake booster plugged. I need all of the ports on the carb to be plugged. The carb isn't bolted down yet. PCV, I already said that. The fuel system, it's plumbed-ish. We're going to be running off the tank just like we had before for now. I have all my belts tightened, and I currently have the clutch fan back on temporarily just so I could run it. I don't have a lower radiator hose, so there's that. And just a bunch of little things. I don't even know if my ignition system's actually complete and done, and I just realized I haven't even shown you that. So a lot of stuff still to do, and just not enough time, you know. But the bright side is we got a ton done, and I filmed this over the course of like a week and a half, and to be honest, I don't exactly remember what I did a week ago. All I know is that I started the week with a completely blown apart motor, and now it's together, and it's mostly a motor. So I think that's a win. But in the next video, we're gonna get this baby running, hopefully right and better than it ever ran when I ran it before. And hopefully running good enough to be a daily driver. Who knows? Fingers crossed. So anyways, that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I apologize again with this time crunch, but I really have no other choice. I have to end it here. I have to end it today. It's just the way things go. So if you enjoyed this video, please let me know. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. You know the whole dealio with YouTube. I appreciate you watching. I thank you for watching. And, well, I guess I'll see you next time. See you later. So close.